In a significant development that could have an important bearing on the course of relations between India and Pakistan in the near term, the International Court of Justice today ruled that Pakistan breached its obligations under international law when it failed to inform the arrested former Indian naval officer Kulbhushan Jadhav of his right to consular access under the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations. The World Court also said that Pakistan violated international law when it deprived India of the right to communicate with and have access to Jadhav, to visit him in detention, and to arrange for his legal representation before he was placed on trial for the crimes of espionage and terrorism by a Pakistani military court. Jadhav was arrested in Pakistan by the Pakistani authorities in March 2016, and a video confession that he purportedly made was broadcast almost immediately, in which he is heard saying that he was an Indian spy and had carried out terrorist acts on Pakistani soil. In April 2017, a Pakistani military court sentenced him to death, which is when India went to the ICJ to demand a stay on the execution and a finding by the court that Pakistan had violated its international obligations by denying India consular access to Jadhav. Both countries vigorously argued their case in The Hague, and the ICJ ruled finally 15-1 in the operative part of its judgment. The dissent, by the way, was that of the Pakistani ad hoc judge, that Pakistan is one, under an obligation to inform Kulbhushan Jadhav without further delay of his rights and to provide Indian consular officers access to him in accordance with Article 36 of the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, and two, that Pakistan has an obligation to provide, by the means of its own choosing, this is important, effective review and reconsideration of the conviction and sentence of Jadhav. This review, the court said, must fully take into account the effect of the violation of international law committed by Pakistan in denying Jadhav consular access. What this means in plain language is that Jadhav's so-called confessional statement, which Pakistan used as the basis for his conviction and which India said was coerced as a consequence to Jadhav being denied his rights to consular and legal assistance from his own government, the ICJ in essence is saying that this confession should be treated as fruit of the poisonous tree. Not in so many words, but in effect. While the ICJ did not accept India's Hail Mary plea that Jadhav be set free, the World Court said that fair reparations for the denial of consular access means insisting that Jadhav get this access and that Pakistan review and reconsider the conviction and sentence. Discarding his confession may perhaps amount to the same thing, provided Pakistan honestly and fairly conducts the review process, of course. Since the ICJ left the choice of the mechanism for review to Pakistan, it may still decide to confine this process to its military courts. But if the country's civilian courts get into the act and display some independent mindedness, then it is possible, I suppose, that the review process may be a substantial one and provide Jadhav some relief. So where do we stand? This much we can say with certainty. First, the Jadhav case is essentially an issue of jurisdiction. This is a victory for international law in a sense. India has always been reluctant to go before the ICJ, and the fact that it went to the ICJ despite enormous reservations by bureaucrats traditionally that there's a huge risk in going, what may happen if the court rules against India. This was a decision that took some courage on the part of India's political leadership, and essentially in a way, by staying the execution of Jadhav and ordering Pakistan to review the sentence, the Indian faith in the ICJ and in international law as a whole has been vindicated. But we do know now that, secondly, Pakistan is obliged to provide Kulbhushan Jadhav consular access from the Indian side. This means that an Indian diplomat or perhaps a group of Indian diplomats would have the right to meet Jadhav in custody, to speak to him privately, and in the course of that conversation, they could then essentially, the Indian side, the Indian diplomats could glean the circumstances under which Jadhav was arrested. They could understand the circumstances under which Jadhav made his so-called confession. And I dare say that this would probably provide some ammunition for the Indian side to, in a way, discredit the Pakistani prosecution case. So this is also a very clear takeaway that Pakistan must give consular access. Secondly, Pakistan has to review and reconsider the conviction and the sentencing of Kulbhushan Jadhav for the crime of espionage and terrorism. And since the court said that you must take into account the fact that he suffered, the fact that he was denied consular assistance clearly had a bearing on the nature of the conviction and sentencing, that this too must be taken into account. This is a clear indication from the court that his confession really should be disregarded. So this is also something that we can say with a great deal of certainty. Having said that, the court did not agree with the Indian plea that the death sentence be annulled, and it did not agree with the Indian plea, of course, that Jadhav be released. Finally, and this needs to be underlined, the court gave the Pakistani side full freedom to decide the mechanism and the process by which the conviction and sentencing of Kulbhushan Jadhav has to be reviewed. Now, Pakistan may dig its heels in and decide that a military court or the military judicial system will continue to handle this file. They may say that, well, we have reviewed the matter, we have reconsidered the matter, and we don't think that there is any need to change the decision as far as the conviction and sentencing of Jadhav is concerned. And that may be what Pakistan decides because the ICJ has given it the full freedom to, in a sense, take the next step forward. India can, of course, always go back to the ICJ and say that Pakistan hasn't implemented the ICJ ruling in good faith. But if Pakistan decides to be bloody-minded, the fact is that there isn't anyone or any institution that can really do much about it. So at the end of the day, what we have is a reprieve for Kulbhushan Jadhav. It's clear that the sentence of death will not be carried out until this process of review is over. But since it's entirely up to Pakistan how to conduct this review, the outcome of that process is unknown. To my mind, this underlines, in a sense, the essentially political nature of this whole problem between India and Pakistan. The centrality that the accusations of terrorism have come to occupy in the bilateral relationship, the fact that India accuses Pakistan with plenty of evidence that Pakistan has been supporting terrorist organizations on its soil and they've been conducting attacks on India and they haven't effectively prosecuted or acted against these organizations, is a major impediment in the relationship. And somewhere down the line, for the Pakistani military, Jadhav and the crimes that they have accused him of becomes something that they can hold on to say, look, this is not just an Indian charge against Pakistan, but that we also can play this game. We also have this charge to make against India. Somewhere down the line, this connection has to be broken, and the only way to do that, to my mind, even though international law today has given a sort of short-term reprieve, is for politicians on both sides, in Pakistan and India, to decide that the life of one man should not be held in balance in this fashion. India and Pakistan need to find a way to move the relationship forward. If they do that, chances are that a solution to the Kulbhushan Jadhav case will also be found.